Hey, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to take on a new reel. It's a Shimano Catana 2500 FC. And every now and then I have a customer who I'm servicing reels for that asks me if I can pick them up a reel. And I work with a distributor that from time to time gets product in and then it makes it available to me. This time around they had these Katanas. It's a 2500, which is right between the 2000 and the 3000 series. A little unique for a Shimano. It's a red color. Most of the time we're used to those gray or black and silver type reels. But this one overall is a moderately priced reel. It's about $40. It is meant for inshore rivers and lakes. It holds approximately 140 yards of 8-pound test. And what's going to make this reel interesting today is that it has an elliptical drive. So it has 2 ball bearings and an elliptical drive. And I'll show you how to work on an elliptical drive. And because this is a new reel, we'll do a couple of things. We'll look at it. We'll see what makes it tick. I'll show you the internals of it from an engineering standpoint. And if you have one and it's ready for servicing, I'll show you how to service that as well. So let's get started. We're going to get started by taking the spool off. I'm going to service the top of the reel first just to show you the parts to that. So we'll take the top off, and that's a top drag reel. Next we have a click rotor and a series of shim washers. They hold the click rotor on, but they also give you spacing on the spool so that it doesn't bottom out on the rotor. Sometimes you can pull them all out together. In this case we can't. Sometimes you have to take them out one by one or at least get it started. And that's these are just little simple black washers. And you'll notice that I'm putting all of these pieces into a parts bucket, a parts tray. I just use the bottom of plastic jugs in that. In this case I think that's a vinegar jug or an apple cider jug, I'm not sure which. But I like to put them in one place so that as I go to reinstall the reel, I know where to find the pieces and the parts. I just took the lock screw out. That releases the nut for the rotor. This one looks like it's a 12 millimeter nut, and it's a traditional threading that is clockwise to tighten, counterclockwise to loosen. We'll go ahead and take that out. And that will give us the access to the rotor and underneath. And the first thing you can see is this is set up as an anti-reverse reel. So it has an anti-reverse bearing in there. Let's go ahead and take that off. Now most of the time, unless this is broken, I don't tend to go service that. But because we're getting a first look at this, let's go ahead and take it off. That'll expose the pinion gear and the bearing. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm taking the 3 screws that hold this mount in and take them off, and I'm laying them on my desk first, and actually I'm going to leave them there for the process of this. Most of the time I would put these into a parts bucket, but because I'm just going to open this up and take it away, I'm going to leave them right here. So underneath on the auto reverse, you're going to notice that there is a indentation that rides on this click mechanism here. So you want to make sure when you reinstall you have that set up proper. And if you needed to get into these roller bearings, you would remove this final nut, but we're not going to go ahead and do that. Okay, there's a ball bearing on here, and there's the little ferrule where this rides on. So we'll just pull this out just to show you the setup here. Pinion gear, it's well lubed. Again, it's a new reel. Shielded ball bearing. And if you ever needed to replace this gear, that's exactly how you would do it. Remove the anti-reverse, pull out the shaft, replace either the shaft or the bearing. We're just going to go ahead and put that back in. Again, new reel doesn't need to be oiled. If you wanted to, you could oil it at that point. We're going to go ahead and put the shield back on. And this is a good time to tell you if you're working on a reel for the first time, if you're not comfortable working on reels but you're taking on the challenge, go take pictures. Take pictures along the way, see what makes the reel tick, but also know the sequence that you took these pieces and parts off and how to put them back together. Now I'm looking for this to line with this, and there's the 3 screw holes which are going to line with this triangle here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you just can work with that anti-reverse lever there to line it up. We're going to go ahead and put those 3 screws back in here. And again, there were no differences. I'm always aware that you better watch what you're taking off, because there are screws that are similar but not identical. Some manufacturers will give you a different thread on one of them for whatever reason. They'll give you a shorter screw because maybe clearances or tolerances aren't right there. And there's other reasons why these things are set up that way. We're going to leave the rotor off now because we want to remove the side plate and get to the gearing. So first thing you want to do is take a turn of the reel and see if this knob is turning. If the knob is turning, it means you have a through post for the handle, and that's a handle screw. So we're going to take that off. Now most of the time that's true. If it's not turning, that it's a screw into the main gear. But every now and then you'll come across a reel, some of the older ones in particular, like the Silver Series pen, the Daiwa 7000s, for example, the Ryobis, where even though this knob is not turning, there's a set screw underneath. So just be aware of that. Now we're going to take the bump shield off. Again, 2 ball bearings, we saw one of them already up top, so there's going to be one on this sleeve, and that's probably about it. Bump screw here. Sometimes you have a stud here. Just be aware of what it takes, and I'll just kind of share this with you. So take the one off. Again, notice which one it is. It's a small set screw. And if you go to pull it right now, it's not working, but you can't see a screw there. That's because the other screw is hiding in the handle here. So you have to kind of be observant about what you're doing. Pull this one out, and also take a note. This is a good time to take pictures as well. This one's a longer screw. I'm trusting my memory here, but if you're, again, uncomfortable with this, take those pictures. Cell phone camera, digital camera, video camera, doesn't matter. But take that off, and that bump guard needs to come off because there's a 3rd case screw here. 3 screws. They're Phillips head, but they also have a through slot. So sometimes it's easier to work this with a flat-bladed screwdriver. And again, before I put these in a parts bucket, I'm going to lay these down, because I've seen this has got an indentation, this has got an indentation, and I've seen some reels where because of those indentations they've changed the screw that belongs in there. So instead of being a rough thread, it could be a fine thread. Instead of being 1 inch, it could be 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just making sure that these are identical before I go any further here. This is a case where this bottom one seems to work better with a flat-bladed screwdriver because it's riding out on the case, I notice. And then we'll be able to remove the case. Okay, case comes off by taking those 3, pulling out. And here's the internal workings of this. It's got a main gear. It's got a crosswind block here. It's got a crosswind gear behind it. And it's got the spool shaft, which is held in by a set screw. So I'm going to pull that set screw out. I'm also going to take those 3 screws now that I know that they are all the same and put them in my parts basket. Pull out the set screw for the crosswind block, and that allows me to remove the shaft. And why do I have to do that before I pull the main gear out? Well, I have to do that before I pull the main gear out because the shaft rides in between the two, and there's no way to pull this out without removing the shaft. So if you have to replace a main gear, you're going to have to remove that shaft in order to do that. This is pretty basic engineering in the reel. Other than that, and the fact that this is a elliptical drive. So what is an elliptical drive? An elliptical drive means that it's not round, that it goes in an ellipse, and you'll see on this reel that there's a kind of flat teeth, and then there's more proud teeth. So the gearing on this is not a round gear. You'll also notice it on the back of this reel. two relatively flat sides, two relatively proud sides, elliptical rather than circular. Okay, well that presents a problem when you go to reinstall. So we're going to show you how to do that in the servicing of this reel. You can see that the factory lubrication here is it's adequate, it's not heavy. And people ask me all the time, you know, are you using enough lubrication? And this is just a good example. You don't want to use too much traps contaminants. All right, so how do we put this back so that we know that we've got the proper operation of this? There's reference marks on the crosswind gear, and there's reference marks on the main gear. Now it's probably hard to see there, so I went ahead and I kind of gave you an example of this. So on the main gear, you'll see that there's three triangles. Actually, there's two. Made it wrong. That's not there. So you have an east and a west, and you have a marking. In this case, it says MM or NN or 11N25. I don't even have that right. But at any rate, there's reference pointers here on the main gear. And then on the bottom gear, the crosswind gear, you have three triangles, north, east, and west, and you have the stud where this crosswind block sits. So how do you do this? You align your ellipticals to overlay. You want east and west lined up with east and west. You want the stud on the south and the triangle on the north on the crosswind gear. So let me show you that and just take a moment just to show you the other two pieces of this reel. So it's a 2-ball bearing reel. We saw the one when we took the pinion gear out. Here's the other one in the side plate. We have a bushing on this side, and if you take that bushing out, notice that there are ears on both sides of that bushing, and they sit in the little indentation. You probably can't see that on this, but they need to sit in there. If they don't sit in there, the reel will not seal up properly. Okay, so I've got this lined up, south, north, east, west, triangle, 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 stud. Just like that picture there. Okay, I'll put the crosswind block on. And I'm going to take this one now. Forget that the top triangle is not there. East and west, I'm going to line up. So that it seats with the reel. So that's how you do it. You have, oops, I think I'm off a tooth. Okay. East and west. Crosswind block. Actually, we can take that crosswind block off for a minute. Just turn this reel now. Just hold your finger on that little stud and make sure that the reel is turning freely. That'll tell you that you have the alignment correct. So I'm turning the pinion gear, holding the main gear, turning this around just to make sure that there's no snags. And you'll know, by the way, you'll know it's snagged because it'll jam if you don't have that alignment correct. Okay, I'm going to go back now, reinstall then. We're going to come back, put this crosswind block on. We're going to put the rotor on, because you need the rotor on before you, oops, you don't. I'm sorry. I'm going to put the shaft on. And the shaft is a D-shaped shaft on the bottom, so you want to align that with your crosswind block. And then we want to get the set screw, and again, this is another reason why this little parts tray works so well, is that I know just to go look in my parts tray for it. And you'll notice this one has a very small Phillips head, and I'm using just a micro screwdriver here. And these come in a tray, usually very inexpensive. I think I paid maybe $3 or $4 for it at Harbor Freight. But from time to time, you will get small mechanicals that you need to work with there. Okay, once we put that crosswind block back, we can put the side plate back on, and you want to make sure that it fits free and easy without binding. We know that the 3 screws that we took out are the same, so it doesn't matter which hole they go in. Thank you, Henry Ford, for your interchangeable parts. We said this was a Phillips head screwdriver. So some folks ask from time to time, can I use a mechanical screwdriver, and an electric or battery powered one? And my general stock answer is I prefer not to, and I really prefer not to on reinstalling like we're doing now, because these screwdrivers have a lot of torque in them, and they can bind a reel. They can snap a side plate if it happens to be a plastic one, if you're not careful. But I understand there's folks out there that don't have hand strength, need an assist, and I would tell you go ahead and use them, but leave it short of the final turn or two, and then finish that final turn or two by hand. Okay, so now we've gone ahead and we've put that back together. We're going to go put the rotor on now. And you remember that we had the rotor here with the nut that turned in a traditional sense, clockwise to tighten and counterclockwise to loosen. So we're going to go reinstall that. That's a 12 millimeter nut. And I have my 12 millimeter here. And lots of folks know that I have a whole tray of tools here. That's because it seems that there's nothing constant here in terms of what the manufacturers use for the nuts. So I have both the traditional standard threading and the metric threading. And I just keep it close at hand so that I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to find them. All right, bump shield goes back on. I'll find my 2 little screws that go with that. And those of you that watch me know I have a little bit of trouble with little screws, but hopefully we won't have too much trouble. And remember the one that came out of the handle. And that's the other thing that's good about the parts tray. If you look down in your parts tray and there's something that's sitting there that you don't remember where it came from, go back to your pictures, take a look, and also you know that you didn't leave anything behind when you went to do it. There's a set screw here for the nut that we just put on. That holds it from turning backwards when you're reeling, so it keeps it from loosening. Kind of a standard piece there. Go ahead and put the click rotor back in. Now the click rotor tells you that your drag is engaging. If you notice on the bottom of the spool here, there's a little tab. It's sitting here, and this tab will interact with the teeth on the click rotor, and it'll when you're spooling backwards, it'll start clicking to let you know that your drag is letting out line. So that's the purpose of that piece there. And then these shims not only hold that click rotor down, but they also give you spacing so that this spool does not bottom out on the reel. So if you're working on a reel and you find out that you get a bump on the bottom of the grind, that's what that's about. Okay, we're going to put this back in. You notice that I put that handle screw right into the handle when I took it off. Just makes it easy for me to find it when I go to put it back on. These are just things that I've learned over 20 years of fixing reels. So, okay, so we should have the bottom done now. We'll just go up top and take a look at the gearing there. A little tight there. Actually, a little tight above. There we go. And put that back on there. I had a little, when I went to reinstall that anti-reverse, that clicker got caught in the middle, and that's what had to be tripped there to get that operating properly. Okay, so we're back on that. We're going to take this off just to show you the drags inside this. Now, again, it's a new reel. They don't have to be serviced. If they did, you would remove the drag spring clip. Again, a good place for that is right in the parts basket. And then I believe this one has felt drags. We'll take a look. Yes, it has the felt drags. Felt drags, you have three systems of felt drag. You'll have a fiber drag, and you'll have a Teflon drag. These have felt drags. That's perfectly fine. And felt drags get oiled. You would use an oil like Real-X or the manufacturer's oil, but make sure it's a fishing reel oil when you go ahead to do that. We're going to put that back in. Now this is a typical setup. So you'll have 3 and 3. 3 metal, 3 felt. 2 of the metal are rounded. 1 of the metal has ears on it. It's called an ear washer. And they alternate. So it goes felt washer, round washer, felt washer, the one with the ears. And the one with the ears fits in the slot in the spool. There's 2 slots counter 180 to each other. Last of the metal ones. Then you go grab that spring again. And it is a spring, so you have to be careful when you do it. There's a groove inside the spool here. You want to set that spring into the groove. Then you're going to have to compress it a little bit to fully set it. So I typically want to hold my fingers onto the one side so that it doesn't shoot out. Then make sure that I have it properly seated. Grab the reel. Just work it through so that it comes down properly. And we're buttoning up the reel now with the top drag. So what have we learned about this reel? Nice reel, $40, 2 ball bearings, elliptical drive, smooth operator, Shimano quality. Overall, it's a nice reel. So I hope you learned something from that. I hope you see the internals of this, if this is a reel you're considering purchasing. It's got nice looks and cosmetics to it. 2 ball bearings is perfectly fine for a 2500 series. The felt washers are perfectly fine for that. The elliptical drive does smooth it. It makes the operation smooth. I like it, and I'm sure my customer is going to like it as well. But I wanted to take the time today to do this video to introduce you to the reel and to show you how to do elliptical drives in terms of servicing them. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.